Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley from Inkclips and welcome back to another video. Now in today's tutorial, I am super excited to share a fun new product that's going to add lots of texture to your card, but it also takes out the messiness of an older product. And you might already hear my laminator heating up off to the side there, and that's because we're going to be using the Thermoweb FLAC transfer sheets. These are really awesome and new, and it's similar to the process of foiling, where you can apply these using that kind of heat transfer method. And there's also lots of other ways to apply it to your projects. And in today's video, we're going to be creating some really awesome backgrounds with this product and also some cool and unique ways to use it on your critters using some of my awesome critter stamps. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So for this first card, I'm going to use some double-sided adhesive tapes to create a really fun plaid pattern on my card. So I'm just going to create some diagonals here. Just adding them right down onto the card. And this sticky double-sided tape is going to help transfer that flocking from the transfer sheet right onto my project. Now before I do my other diagonals, I want to remove the backing sheets on this so I can layer the tape up in the opposite direction because I want to create a really cool plaid pattern. So I'm removing the tape off of this, but I'm not going to apply any flocking to this just yet. First, I want to take the tapes, and then I'm going to go in the opposite direction to create a plaid. Once that crisscross pattern has been created with my double-sided tape, I'm going to go in with my FLAC transfer sheet. I'll line it up with the sheet so there's not too much waste. And then I'll go in here and press that down. And I'm just going to give it a firm pressure all over to make sure that flocking is going to transfer onto the sheet. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that that pretty colored side is down onto your surface. And that's what's going to pick up the flocking with the adhesive. You can even go in with a brayer too to make sure that's really pressed down, and that's going to transfer that flocking really nicely onto this. Now you can also run this right through a die cutting machine with no dies, and just that pressure alone is going to apply that flocking really nicely. So then I'm going to go in slowly and lift off the flocking sheet from my background, and there we have that really cool background already starting to form. And this stuff is so fuzzy, it's just awesome. Then I'll go in with my second width of tape. This one's quite a bit thinner. And I'm going to go in here and just add some stripes to kind of accent the ones we've already done. So I'm just going in here, laying that down. And I'm just applying stripes in between, and you can even go over top of some of the stripes we've already applied. This is just going to give the background a little bit more dimension with that really fun plaid that we're doing. And then I'll do the same thing that I did with the blue, and I'm just going to create some crisscross stripes to finish off the pattern. Okay, so for this next layer of adhesive, I'm going to use the sunshine yellow sheet of the flocking transfer. So again, I'm going to line it up right in the corner here so we have little waste. And then I'm going to place that over top. I'll grab my brayer again, and I'm just going to brayer over top to make sure that we get a really, really good transfer. So once I have removed that, you can see our background here is building up. I really love how this looks, and we're going to go in with our last skinniest tape to finish off the design. With this last layer, I'm going in with this thin tape, and I'm just going to add 3 stripes. So I'm adding 1 here, here, and here. So kind of adding those close together will finish off that plaid pattern, and I really love the look of this, and we're going to add a really bold color for these smaller stripes. So with these thinner stripes, I thought we would add a more vibrant color to kind of make it pop. So I thought I'll use this bright pink. I'm going to lay that down, and again we're going to grab our brayer here since this really helps to put lots of pressure down onto that and make sure that everything is going to transfer down. So look at just how fun this background is. I love how fuzzy it is with that flocking, and it was so easy and simple to just use those tapes to apply the flocking down, and with it being in these sheets instead of like a jar like it used to be, you really get some awesome use out of it. Now these backgrounds, unfortunately you can't really continue to use the flocking that's on here because it pulled off flocking in areas like this. However, in these areas, you could totally use this, or you could use this as a background for another card. So it's really simple. It's kind of your choice what you want to do with this, but you can use some of this excess to create more cards with some of that in the middle. So to finish off the plaid card, I'm going to grab some alphabets from my space training stamps that I'm going to use HEY to spell the word hey, and I'm just going to stamp these with kind of a space in between. It totally doesn't matter how they are. I'm using some embossing ink. This was the perfect medium. And then I'm going to grab the archival ink and go right over top of that. So this is just going to make my archival ink sticky and create that really awesome image that I can emboss. So once I've stamped that, I'm going to add some clear embossing powder, and then I can heat set this to give it some nice shine. Okay, so I want to add down the sentiment to my fun plaid panel here that we've created. So I'm going to take the station and use this ruler. This has become super helpful for me. I can line it up with my grid lines here. So let's see, I want to add my sentiment down there. I'll line it up on both sides with the grid lines to make sure that it'll be nice and straight here. So I'm just adding a little bit of collage medium to the back of my letters. And then what makes this super easy is I'm able to go right from 0, since this is a centering ruler. And then I'm going to make sure that it's really lined up with that. So just apply a little bit of adhesive to the back there. And then I can move on. So with this ruler, I can see how much space I want in between each letter. So I'll add a little bit of space there. This is going to make sure that it's lined up super well on here. And this thing is a lifesaver. And then to make sure this sentiment stays in place as I, as the glue dries, I'm going to just grab a magnet and put it right down over top of some of these areas to make sure that it's going to hold down and dry really nicely. And then I can set this off to the side and continue working on whatever I'm creating. So I just finished this off by adding it right onto a card base, and I love how we were able to create this background just using some different widths of tapes. It really gives you some awesome opportunities to use this. You could tape off some cool backgrounds and create some cool things for critters to sit on too. But I love how we tied it all together with my space training set using these letters to make it really nice and a sophisticated card to give out. So for this next project, I'm going to be using this backsplash stencil from my line. This has super intricate detail in it, and I'm excited to add flocking with it. However, I'm going to be adding transfer gel over top of this, and that can sometimes seep underneath stencils as well as other mediums. If I'm just holding it down, I'll use the station because that's super easy, but if I want to make sure nothing seeps underneath, I'm going to use this new product called Pixie Spray, and it's going to be a repositionable adhesive for the back of your stencil. It dries super quick, and it's really easy to use. So I'm going to spray it right inside of my jar here. I'll just spray kind of a light layer over top. Once you're done spraying that, you want to just let it dry for a minute, and then it's going to be tacky and you can apply it right to your project. I'm going to place my stencil right down onto my cardstock here. I'm excited to see how this stuff works. So I'm just going to press it down. Get a nice seal there. It's not really moving around on my cardstock, which is really awesome for my project. I do want to say I'm not going to do this to every stencil, but for things that are super intricate like this, where you want the inside to stick, this is a great option. So I'm going to use the transfer gel here. This is going to transfer through the laminator. I'm just going to grab a little bit underneath, and especially with this kind of paste where it's super liquidy, it's good to have this kind of adhesive underneath your stencil like this. And then let's see how my stencil did. So I'm just going to lift this off. Doesn't really rip the cardstock, and it leaves really no residue on there, which is super nice. But look at how clean and crisp those lines are. Sometimes that's super hard to do, but especially with a stencil like this, there's so much detail in this and small little areas. And it did a really great job. Like, look. Okay, so it didn't say to heat set this, so I totally just did, and it sped up the drying time quite a bit, so it's all dry now, and I'm ready to apply my flocking. Now for this one, I'm just going to grab my trimmer here, and I'm just going to cut out a couple different strips of the flocking in each different color. So here, I'll grab the yellow. I'm gonna do a little bit of that pink as well. I'll do a couple different size strips. Okay, so for this, I'm just going to take my strips and place them right next to each other like this, and then I'm going to place them face down so that they're ready to kind of go on my sheet. And this is just going to create a multicolored sheet of the flocking. So I don't just want to do the background just in one color. I have lots of colors to choose from, and I'm able to grab different size strips that I had cut out to create this really fun background sheet. So after I've laid down my strips face down, I'm going to grab some purple tape and just tape down all of these strips in a row. So this is creating, like I said, that multicolored sheet of this stuff, which is really awesome. A great technique if you love lots of color and want tons of color in your background rather than just one color. So to create my sandwich to go through the laminator, I'm grabbing a piece of vellum, but you can use printer paper as well to carry it through. Then I'll grab my sheet with the transfer gel that we've applied on there. And then I'm going to grab my multicolored sheet and we're going to face that pretty side down onto the cardstock with the transfer gel. Then I'm going to take this and simply run it right through my laminator. This has been heating up for quite some time as I've been filming this video, and it is on the 5 mil setting. So it's really nice and hot to transfer all of that flocking onto my transfer gel. So this is very similar to foiling as well. It kind of uses that same thing with the carrier sheet on it, and the heat really applies it. So basically any application you could do with foiling, you could totally do with this flocking sheet as well. So here you can see that fun positive and negative you get. With this one, I love all those colors and that really nice white space we get from that stencil. It did a really great job of transferring, and I love my design in all these bright colors as well. And then for this one, you get the negative. So this one has the lighter colors, and then that texture of the stencil is actually darker. So you don't really waste anything when you use this. You can totally use the transfer sheet excess as well, which I really love. So I've quickly colored in these two little character image from the Bestest Friends stamp set. I love these two little guys here. And I'm going to use the hugs sentiment as well. I think that goes along perfectly with this card, and you can send it for any occasion, whether it's a get well soon card or anything like that, or an encouragement. Hugs is just a great all-around sentiment. So for this, I'm using some foam tape behind these pieces, but to make sure that it stays really nice and stuck to the flocking, I'm adding lots of collage matte medium right behind that, and that's just gonna make sure the liquid adhesive kind of goes into those fibers and makes sure that it stays stuck, whereas the adhesive just on the back of foam tape might not do the job. So for this, I just finished it off with a top folding card base. I love how this turned out, and this texture of this is awesome. Now this actually happens to be the negative portion that I used, and I still have the positive portion, which I'll use in a future video for another card, which I think is awesome. You get kind of a 2-for-1 thing. And then I love how we finish this off with the Bestest Friends images. This is a perfect card with all those bright colors to give off to a kid to kind of cheer their day up, which I think is awesome. Okay, so this is me after I've already filmed the video. This is the next day, and I wanted to get flocking on this sweater here from the Dudes 2 stamp set, and I couldn't figure out how to do it yesterday. It was something about the cardstock, so I switched to a thinner cardstock. This is kind of a more cheaper quality cardstock you're going to want to use, and I'm going to share a fun method using embossing powder. So I'm going to grab an Emboss It pen. This is basically like the clear sticky ink that you'd find in an embossing ink pad, but in a pen form. So you're able to get in finer areas, and that's how we're going to fill in the sweater. So I'm just going back and forth, making sure to fill this whole thing. And since we're using like a thinner piece of cardstock, you'll see that ink on the paper kind of sinking in, and it'll kind of turn a darker color. Now when I go around here, I'm going to go right up to the edge, but I want to make sure that I keep those black lines there. So don't go over the black lines, just go right up to the edge of them, and then it'll keep the flocking contained inside there, and you'll still have your lines in the end. So once I've finished filling all of that in, I'm going to go in with my clear embossing powder and sprinkle it right over top. And then if there's any excess, I can go in with a paintbrush and just wipe off anything that's sticking in places where I don't want it to. So I've heated up the embossing powder pretty quickly and stopped right when it turned shiny. That's pretty important to make sure you do that so that none of the embossing powder kind of sinks into the cardstock and disappears. Then I'll grab a piece of flocking and face it pretty side down onto the paper here. Then I can flip over my cardstock, and you'll see kind of where that sweater is. If you're using a thin piece of cardstock, you'll see where that is. And all I'm going to do is grab my heat tool. Alright, so this got loud, so I'm going into voiceover here, but basically I'm going to be heating the back of the cardstock with my heat tool, and then I'm going to grab my brayer and brayer it down right in between each one. And this is going to reheat the embossing powder, which will grab onto the flocking, and the pressure will kind of lift it off of that flocking sheet to transfer it all. So once I'm done, here is that sweater that it's created. It's not always super perfect because we did that embossing, so you can always go in with a little pick and go around the edges to just kind of clean it up a little bit and get rid of any area, because the powder might have gotten a little bit outside of the lines, so it's pretty easy to just scratch off any of the excess flacking. And then all you need to do is color in this image, and it's gonna be so fun for a card since it's got that awesome texture for this sweater, which I just love. So once I've colored this guy in, I just did it with colored pencils since it was on that thinner cardstock, but I love this fuzzy sweater here. So I'm going to just add some adhesive right to the back of this. I'll just line the whole thing with lots of tape runner. You could use liquid adhesive as well, but since it's so thin, I'm just going to use that tape runner, and then I can press it down onto a piece of my stark white cardstock. And this is just going to strengthen it on the back, and then I can cut this right along the edge, and it'll be a really great image that we can pop up onto our card. To create the background, I've stamped my classic flannel background stamp using my Gur ink, and I sprayed this to get kind of a really cool watercolor effect, which I love. So then I'm going to take the Cheers stamp from the Bestest Friends stamp set, and I'm just going to bend it upward, which I love about clear stamps is you're able to kind of manipulate them like this, and then I can line it up and stamp it right down onto my card. So I've added everything together onto this card. I really love that fuzzy sweater on there. That texture is just awesome to add onto cards, and I love that you can add it onto little critter images like this as well. And I can't wait to see if you guys do this with like little animals or things like that. I absolutely am in love with it. Alright, there are so many other ways to use this product, but I wanted to share two of my favorite in today's video because if we went into all of them, it would be way too long. But I'll link a video down below with lots of different uses for this stuff. I'm all about it, kind of creating that really awesome texture on your cards and also kind of cutting down on some of the mess because flocking used to be really popular in those jars and you would have it all over the place. So having it in these little sheets is awesome. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. I would love to hear your comment down below on your favorite card in today's video and your favorite way to use this stuff. I think it is super awesome, and I love that it works just like foiling too, because if you have the tools to foil, you have the tools to do this as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you never want to miss another video from me and get all my notifications, and I'll see all of you very soon for another card making and crafting video. Have a great day. Bye.